Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to thank and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Hi everyone, and welcome to Room by Room, the Home Organisation Science Insights podcast, produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We're champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element, with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Gabriella Yastra, coming to you from Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. Let's begin.
Hello and welcome back to the show. Picture a home filled with design choices that not only checks the aesthetics box, but also helps to slash your energy bill and nurture the planet. In today's episode, we're examining the various eco-friendly design features we can incorporate into our homes, including practical advice for renters. And joining us today is civil engineering lecturer Krishanu Roy, who currently teaches at the University of Waikato. So welcome to the show, Chris. How are you doing today?
Thank you. No, thank you for having me. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I really appreciate you joining us today. I love to know more about your background and what sparked your interest in engineering.
Yeah, I think it all started when I guess we all start from schools and we look at different options to pursue our career. So I think when I looked at options from medical to engineering, I sort of realized that I had more passion towards making things happen. And I always wanted to do more about physics or something to do with mechanics, to be precise. So I thought civil engineering is a good sort of career field where I could pursue and learn more about physics and mechanics. And so that's how it all started, and never had to look back really. So yeah, that's the background.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, what can you tell us about some common misconceptions regarding sustainable design enhancements for the home?
Yeah, I think when we look at sustainable design, I mean, the two ways to look at it, obviously, the design aspect and then obviously material aspect as well. So when we talk about the design, it falls under how we are looking at passive home design. For example, we may choose a material which may be good for upfront carbon, but may not be so sustainable and good for long-term performances when we are talking about operational usage of that particular design or material. So we have problems with energy usage, water usage, maintenance, and other problems. So when we talk about sustainable home design, we have to look at not just short term, not just using a material which can only reduce carbon emissions upfront, but also during the whole life stage, which is starting from embodied stage to operational stage to end of life, pretty much connecting it to the circular economy. So I guess the design has to be as such that when we look at the overall or whole of life assessment of the homes, we have counted for as less carbon as possible. And we can do that by choosing not just upfront carbon-friendly materials, but sometimes materials which performs better at the later stage of the house actually performs better overall. So that's what I think stands out when we are looking at material choice or design choice for sustainable home design.
Yeah, that's really good to know because I feel like the general masses we don't really think so much about what the material of the walls or the skeleton of the building we're in, what they're made of. So I'd love to know more about that later on in the podcast. But before we get into detail, I would love to get to know you better. So this is Have You Met Krishanu? And my first question for you is, what is your favorite book?
Oh, so I'm quite religious person. So I my favorite religious book is Gita. I'm Hindu, so I read Gita every day, pretty much. And so yeah, that's my favorite book.
Oh, that's good to know. And what about movies? Are you religious with your movies as well?
Not really, not with movies. That's something I like it for fun. So I've got a number of movies that I like. Harry Potter and their series is definitely something that I enjoy. Still do watch it. One of the movies I still keep watching is a movie of Will Smith, which is The Pursuit of Happiness. It's always in the list. Then some of the old movies I quite like. Enjoy those old movies, watching again and again. Shawshank Redemption is one of them. So yeah, movies which has sort of nice stories. I'm not a big fan of, I guess, horror movies,
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
which has some stories behind. So
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think I've ever seen Will Smith in anything apart from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So,
that's a nice.
yeah, well, what's the movie like? Does he play like more or less the same character, or is it something completely different?
The one in Pursuit of Happiness has got a life story. So obviously, it's a story of fighting in life to achieve something. So which really inspires people, I guess. So it just takes him through a whole bunch of challenges throughout his whole career, and he finally gets something. He gets the pursuit of happiness at the end. He had family issues, he had professional issues, and finally managed to win. So, sort of teaches you how to pursue persistence in life and how you can still win. So that's that. And actually, his son also plays a big role in the movie as well. So yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a really compelling one. And as for podcasts, are you listening to any at the moment?
Not at the moment, to be honest. Not
That
something that
that is so fair. I mean, like I host a podcast and everything, but I really only listen to podcasts once in a while because it's really hard to find like a solid. It's not just like, for example, watching movies where you immerse yourself into the movie completely. With podcasts, it's like I'll have like a certain part of my brain that requires some, well, what people can call scratching. So I require like 2 hours of maybe like a brainless activity that I can listen to podcasts to at the same time, if that makes sense. So I totally understand. But what about role models? Is there anyone that you look up to either in your professional life or your personal life?
sort of in my personal life, I always looked up to my dad. Just been how he has managed to achieve what he has achieved in life. Professional wise, I would say Elon Musk is definitely my role model. I had my other role model, Mr. Ratan Tata, who passed away because I represent sort of steel community, and I'm and researcher from the steel structures background. So Mr. Tata had a lot of dealings with steel structures, manufacturing of steel, and did empower a lot of young generations, and how business community had a lot of dealings with Mr. Tata. So he's definitely my other role model. So Elon Musk and him.
That's a really interesting one. I don't think I've ever heard the word steel said so many times in a sentence before, just because I don't work in the engineering field. But what are some of the traits that you find particularly admirable in your role models?
I think some of the most inspiring stories that most of these successful people had to go through is the persistence and the challenges that they faced, and yet not buckle, but still the ability to continue doing what they really believe in it. So that's something I felt really strong, and it's very important to build characters that you believe in something, and you don't give up until you see the end. So that's something both whether we talk about Elon or even others, people may have different preferences in terms of how they like people, but at the end of the day, most of the tech giants and tech successful people or business people would definitely pursue that sort of character where they have a lot of persistence, and how they want to achieve, they wouldn't give up until they achieve, really. So yeah.
Yeah, those are some good traits to look up to. And my last question for you is: has there been a course or a class that you've taken that has stuck with you to this day?
Yeah, structural dynamics. When I started learning about mechanics, which was the main drive to do engineering, when you asked me the first question, why did I do engineering, or what motivated me, it was statics. In physics, we have statics, we have mechanics, we have dynamics. So obviously, statics was always there, but then during when I was pursuing my master's studies in earthquake engineering, learning more about how to design homes and structures to be more resilient and safe against earthquakes, is when actually I got to learn about structural dynamics, which is considered to be one of the most difficult papers within structural engineering community. And I still can relate back to what I learned, and um, not probably day to day work life. It has connections any longer, but I can still feel and relate to it at times. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it's really less about the contents of the class and more about the experience of taking that class that you can apply to your everyday life now, I suppose. So, yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. It's been a pleasure to get to know you better. Now, I'm really excited to jump right into the interview. And for starters, how would you define home organization?
So I think home organization, refers to arranging, and structuring different items, different spaces you have in your home. You have different systems in your home, and how, in a very organized manner, in an orderly manner, in a very efficient way, you can actually organize your home. What it does, though, through this practice of organizing home better, is that it gives you better space, maximize space. It reduces any sort of clutterings. It creates a very sort of uniform and functional living environment. So that's, the takeaways of having a good home organization.
Yeah. And secondarily, how would you define sustainable home design? What role do you think it plays in home organization and feeling less of a clutter and just improving life satisfaction, I suppose, overall in the home?
Yeah, sure. I think when we talk about, defining sustainable home, or designing more homes in a sustainable manner, we're talking about design in a way that focuses on creating homes that are more energy efficient, more environmental friendly materials. So, as I said at the beginning, that we have different ways to make homes more sustainable. A is to pick and choose a material which is more sustainable and less carbon intensive. At the same time, we have different ways of designing the house. For example, you can insulate your house in a way that you need lesser electricity and power throughout the application of that house. So, if you can make your house more energy efficient, if you can use more environmental friendly materials, and if you can reduce the overall environmental impact. When I talk about overall environmental impact, I just want to clarify that we're not talking about only one period of that house. We are talking about the whole of life of that house. So if you can do all those three things nicely, then you would promote designs that can be, maintained with minimum energy usage, and resource that you're going to use over the time of using that house.
Yeah, that's really interesting. When you speak of the environmental impact that occurs over the length of time, what are we referring to?
So when I talk about environmental impacts, we have carbon dioxide, which is the main sort of problem here that we're trying to reduce. Obviously, then CO2 emissions. Also, alongside CO2, we have other, toxic gas release as well, whether it's methane and other gases that are also equally important to reduce. So, environmental impact basically, includes embodied carbon, operational carbon, and end of life carbon scenarios. So, for example, if I take timber, steel, and concrete being the three most popular building materials, if I compare between the three, then you have timber, which performs great at the early stage, which is embodied stage, but may not be as good during the end of life stage, because you actually don't have a lot of options to recycle or reuse that material. While if you talk about steel, you may not have a lot of benefit upfront. So your manufacturing carbon, which we call it embodied carbon, is high, or higher than timber. But when you look at the end of life scenario, you have a lot of benefits in terms of recycling or reuse steel, much better than timber or concrete. So when we talk about environmental impact, we are quantifying carbon emissions during these life stages, and we are trying to assess what is the total impact or overall impact during the whole life cycle.
That's really interesting. I never knew about any of this at all. So, what is the general consensus about which of these three design materials is the most sustainable?
I mean, obviously, unless you are material agnostic, which people generally are, depending on how their preferences are and what their preferences are and how they see it. But again, as I said, that if you look at the overall scenario, then I would say if you have track record of all your material, data that you are needing for your design. For example, if I use steel for my building now or my house now, I must have track record of where do I get that steel from? Is that an imported product? Is that a product made locally here? And if I know, then I have more track record of what happens at the end of life. For example, if I wanted to reuse that steel by using that as a scrap material to make more steel by sending it to the manufacturing plant, then I must know where the material came from in the first place. So do we have the data that we are capturing? What would be needed at the end of life, which is not now, but maybe 50, 60 years down the line. So if we have track record of that data, then it's always good to think about long-term impact, because obviously we talk a lot about net zero 2050 carbon goal, which is what we are all driving and trying to contribute towards worldwide, not just in different countries, but worldwide. We have the target of net zero 2050 goal that we want to at least come close to if we couldn't achieve it. But if we look at the bigger problem is not net zero 2050, the bigger problem is actually what happens beyond that, because we've got only 25 years, but most of these materials that we are using to build our homes and other buildings actually are going to last more than 25 years. They're going to last more than maybe 50 years, 60 years. So yes, you may choose a material now which can do better at the early stage, which is manufacturing stage. When I talk about manufacturing, you're not needing as much of carbon, or you're not emitting as much of carbon, if I correct it, as you do for, let's say, steel when you compare to timber. So obviously steel is much higher upfront carbon. So if you're only talking about reducing it upfront, then you would go with timber. But if you are thinking about long-term end of life scenario, which is what we should be thinking, then we should be using more steel than timber. So it depends on what's your goal and how you want to assess it. And that's the principle that we use, or the technical terminology that we use. We call it life cycle assessment. So we do perform LCA, or life cycle assessment, and then we quantify emissions at different stages. And then we make informed decisions whether we should be using this material, but not the other material.
And with these three design materials, do they play an important role at all in energy efficiency in the home?
Yes, it does. Obviously, for example, if we have timber, if I compare timber with steel, obviously, if I have a timber cladding, that we call it normally weatherboard cladding in a house, right? People will be more familiar with the terminologies like weatherboard cladding or cedar, which is basically made of timber. Obviously, we need more maintenance. You may have to repaint the wall or the cladding material every 5 to 10 years. But if you then were to use a steel cladding system, then you're not needing to repaint, because the paint actually stays for more than 15 years generally. So you are using lesser energy as compared to timber in that scenario. So yes, it does play a big role actually during the operational stage. If you're looking at the energy efficiency, then you are not just looking at you're looking at electricity usage, you're looking at how warm your house is. Obviously, having in a steel house, your heat transfer, if you are designing it properly, if you're insulating your house with more of like sandwich panel, for example, if you have more insulation material, then you have more, heat transfer barrier, which means you're insulating your house to not have as much of heat transfer from inside to outside or outside to inside of your house. So if they are insulated well, then you're not needing that much of air conditioning within your house as well. So which means it's more energy efficient. So if you think about day-to-day life, we are using aircon, we are using, freezer, we are using other utilities that we need as a day-to-day lifestyle. But again, you can reduce those energy usage if you design your house better. And material selection becomes one of the key aspects in order to design your house better.
Yeah. And what are some of the other aspects that we need to take into consideration when designing the home for better energy efficiency?
I think in terms of other, aspects that we should look at is obviously material is one aspect that we spoke about, but that other aspects is, for example, what would be the fire design? What if there was a fire? What if the house catches fire tomorrow? Are you going to be having a material in the house that is going to sustain half an hour to 1 hour of fire rating without collapsing? Are we having enough ventilation in the house to make sure that we don't have any need of other electrical system which needs artificial ventilation in the house? So we can use ventilation during the construction of the house, which could be different types of ventilation, instead of having to use artificial ventilation and causing more damage to the environment and also cost. So we have that we call it energy performance. So every country has their design standard. In New Zealand, if I were to talk more specific about this country here where I work and I live, we have H1 energy performance standard, which means you have to not just choose materials and design buildings in a way which are more resilient and safe. You also have to look at the operational design of the house, which means designing for energy and performance, which would include ventilation, insulation, fire, durability, and other passive home design criteria, which are all very important for the house design.
Yeah. And what are some examples of natural ventilation in a home? What are some of the design features that will accommodate for that?
When we look at natural ventilation, then we do have obviously skylights that we use in our roofs that can actually get you natural lighting. We have different types of ventilation systems, for example, underneath the roofing and cladding material. Especially roofing, we have different flashing systems which actually connect the roofing seats. So we have ventilation for air circulation. We also have problems with condensation, which I missed out, by the way. Condensation is also one of the key aspects for countries which can go really, really cold at winter and during the winter time, and also very hot in summer. So the condensation is one of the key aspects. So make sure that you have designed your house in a way that your condensation is within the limits as well. So yeah, in terms of natural lighting, we use skylights, we use clear lights in the roofing as well. So make sure that you do not actually use all the roofing seats or roofing tiles, which can actually block the natural lighting. You can have always design the house in a way that you have more windows and doors and other high quality roof windows and clear lights in the roof as well. And then you
Yeah.
look at energy efficient heating or cooling or lighting systems that you can use these days. You can sort of look at smart home technologies as well, which can optimize energy usage. We have other energy efficient system as well. For example, passive solar design, solar panels, which also falls under renewable energy, and how we can use sort of strategic window placements for natural heating. So you can use the sunlight to actually heat the window to make sure that you can actually utilize that heat for your energy applications as well, without needing artificial heat, which you actually pay for, but also it's wasting energy and environmental resources. So yeah, these are some of the key aspects that we can look at to better design houses.
Yeah. And on the note of ventilation and having enough of it for the home, how does natural ventilation affect indoor air quality, and how important is that to our health and well-being?
Yeah, it's quite important because generally when you're designing, ventilation and how natural lighting against different ventilation systems. Obviously, it can affect. Obviously, you can calculate how much is the total airflow that you can get out of a ventilation system, and whether it's going to be comparable to natural sort of lights. and if not, then what minimum impact you could have. So that's something, being a building, uh, if you have building physics background, or if you are a sort of building engineer, building designer, then you should be able to calculate, using, for example, large strategically placed windows, how much sunlight you can get into living spaces, or if you have, skylights that you can increase your natural lighting from, especially for rooms, without any exterior walls, that you can definitely take the advantage of using or installing more skylights. So yeah, you can calculate your natural airflow, and you can calculate what would be the artificial airflow, and whether those numbers actually match each other, and what are the cost benefits. Obviously, at the end, you would be looking at cost benefits as well. So that becomes another factor during considering
Yeah.
the best option.
And when it comes to purchasing a home and selecting one that has the right materials, what should people be looking out for? There are loads of well, eco-friendly, or what they call eco-friendly homes, available on the market at the moment that are, marketed as sustainable. What would this mean? What are the questions that we should be asking real estate agents or sellers, for example?
I think we've got these carbon credits which are playing an important role, and that, for example, Tesla's most of their revenue, as we understand, that it's not really from selling the vehicles, but more about selling carbon offsets that they have managed to secure a chunks of the revenue from. So obviously, I feel like that would be promoted more in building construction and building industry as well, not just in car industry any longer. So obviously, if you do use sustainable materials, obviously these days we have Green Star ratings, Home Star ratings. So most of the developers or most of the builders, they would be already familiar with these terminologies such as Green Star, Home Star. We also have Green Building Councils. So obviously you have green tags and different certification systems for homes. So you know, if I use home, let's say type A against type B, then you have 60% energy savings as compared to, buying a house, which may uh, maybe cost you a little bit less upfront money, but then you have to think about, you have to use that house for long term, 50, 60 years, at least during the life stage of the house. So how much extra money are you paying? So obviously you should be looking at the whole operational stage. If I am buying a house, I'm not so concerned about how much extra money I'm paying upfront. That becomes a factor, but not the only factor that I'll be considering. So I would be looking at how much money I'll be paying for my electricity, my other energy, usage and utilities during the whole life cycle. And you can run through some numbers and rough numbers to compare how much savings you're making upfront. And also, you must not forget about the environmental side, that we all have a role to play here. And if we promote more, and if we encourage developers, that okay, I'm happy to pay $10,000, $20,000 more because I know there's a long-term benefit for me, then yes, their mindset will shift and change as well. Because at the moment there are policies in place, but obviously every policies has some loose sides as well. So I guess we have a role to play as well in terms of when buying the house, and the checking the materials used for those houses.
Yeah. And in terms of during renovation or overseeing the construction of a new home, the average homeowner typically doesn't really manage the intricacies of how the renovations are done, especially if outsourcing a designer or contractor. So, in what ways can homeowners go about ensuring sustainable construction or sustainable materials being used in their homes?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that actually brings back to what I was talking about. I mean, if I am the homeowner and if I don't have track record of the material which was used, I can only identify by looking at, and probably just through experiences, I can probably find out what materials were used, what type of materials were used. But I guess when we are having this opportunity to renovate the house, we must not just stick to the standard design. There are more flexibility around it. So obviously, when I'm renovating, or someone is renovating their house, so they have to think long term as well, because we're not renovating every day. So if we took that opportunity to somehow change certain aspects of the home design. For example, you could include an interior feature wall. You could sort of increase more of your insulation material. These days, for example, we have more um, denser insulation material, which can give you higher insulation values, which are needed, that we call it, in scientific terms, we call it R values. So R or U values in European countries, R values in Australia and New Zealand. So if you use a material which has, higher R values, instead of thinking what the actual home actually used, because you're renovating it anyway, then that would bring the operational cost and operational, performance much better, and operational cost down as well. So I think what we're talking about here is not just sticking to the actual design while renovating, but you should be thinking about how can I actually modify slightly, and what are the opportunities for me to increase the energy efficiency of this house through renovating it. And you could do a lot. You could not just add insulation, but you could also add, passive ventilation as well. You could add, more lighting opportunities. If you could just add more clear lights, or if you could add, for example, your roof never had a clear light, you can add clear light so you have more natural lighting. You could add more ventilation by using roof ventilation, ventilation in the flashings and other parts of the house. You could do that. And these are not very costly procedures. So they're quite reasonable in terms of how much it costs. So it's just a slightly different mindset from how we may stick to only the actual design, or maybe only thinking about absolute less money that we have to invest during renovation. So we must calculate based on the long-term application of the house, and not just upfront money for the renovation.
Yeah, those are some really great ideas. But most of what we talked about are achievable by homeowners, not renters. So, what are some easy ways for renters to fit their homes with more sustainable improvements without violating their tenancy agreement?
Yeah, I think there could be some practical considerations or advice, I guess, for renters, that they can sort of look at what are some of the easiest ways that renters can fit their homes. For example, they can look at different energy efficient appliances, because if that's within their control, they can look at using more energy efficient appliances that can be, that can reduce the emissions. And how they can look at using more, maybe LED lighting. They can look at using maybe water saving devices. For example, you have low flow water, systems that you can use. You can look at, indoor planting, that I guess we use a lot these days. When we talk about window treatments, for example, what are the thermal curtains we have and the blinds that we use, which can be made more, energy efficient and improve operational performances. We can look at different options, for example, how to um, use like more energy optimize, or how to use energy efficient smart devices within the house as well. So these are within renters' control, because obviously they can't change the design, or they can't change the material of the house, but they obviously have more to do with the appliances and how they want to use their utilities in the house, so they can contribute. And by integrating some of these elements, you can actually contribute a lot during the operational reduction in carbon. And so it shouldn't just be the homeowners. Renters also have a role to play here.
Yeah, I have used smart bulbs myself, which are LED lighting, and they have been such a game changer. I always thought that it was going to be really annoying to set up, which is kind of true if you invest in the cheaper ones. Um, but the payoff is incredible. There's so many things you can do with it, and not just in terms of saving energy. You can schedule when the lights turn off. You can, check if the lights are left on at home, and things like that, that just simply adds convenience to your life as well. But one thing I haven't heard of before was thermal curtains. I didn't know that was a thing that existed. So I'm absolutely mind blown by it and definitely going to look it up after this. But could you tell us a bit more about what thermal curtains are and what they can do for our homes?
Well, it just sort of just saves sort of the energy that actually you need. Pretty much use it as an insulator, sort of barrier to heat transfer. So obviously, once you have those curtains, then you have more insulating performance from heat transfer from outside to inside or inside to outside. So that's really great. And when I sort of did some research on it and I looked at the cost as well, and it's not really that expensive if you look at it. And there are some real good options and some brands out there in the market which are getting more popular. So I think that's the catch now in the future, that people will be using more of thermal curtains. And I have actually seen some houses in Auckland have already been using it. Some developers actually preferring it, and that is a key selling point for a lot of developers. That okay, we have been promoting more sustainable home design, and yeah, the renters have freedom to go for it. One thing I've missed out though is portable air purifiers as well. So you look at improving the indoor air quality. So we have different air purifiers as well, so that people can use it as well, and which are, I guess people have been using it for a while. But air purifiers, for some countries where air pollution is really really bad, it's really important that you use it in your home, and renters have the choice to use their air purifiers in their homes.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. It's been such a pleasure getting to know more about this from you. Now, let's talk about the more everyday application of what you just shared with us. I'd love to know what's a habit you'd recommend practicing to achieve a more sustainable home, or just to practice in conjunction with the eco-friendly practices that we've implemented in the home.
Yeah, I think as we talked about, when we some of the practices that um, we can implement and we can contribute to reducing carbon emissions or contributing more to more energy efficient building construction. I think we were looking at our behavior. For example, we have how much energy we need, how much aircon we need. Sometimes we are just so fickle minded that we actually don't need the aircon for the whole day. So can we turn it off? So it's just small habits, small things that can contribute a lot. Do we actually need the lights on all the time, and how much light we need? And obviously, I mean, design aspect and material aspect is there, but in terms of day-to-day operations, and sometimes we actually don't need that much water that we are using, not the drinking water I'm referring to, but the water that we need for our day-to-day usage. We probably can look at optimizing those usage as well, how much we need, because obviously we only have limited resources and limited and energy in the universe. So we should be thinking about, for example, rainwater harvesting as well. We do have rainwater products that we can harvest the water from, and then we can reuse it, for example. So there are a number of habits that we can possibly look at, thinking about implementing in our day-to-day lifestyle, which should have a long-term impact of how we contribute towards sustainable homes and sustainable construction.
And what do you think are some of the struggles that people may face in trying to be a bit more aware and conscious about their behavior with using energy and water?
I think some of the consequences, some of the challenge, I guess it's the freedom that we have. So I think once, ethics plays an important role, but also mindset also. So obviously, in terms of, whether I want to use more energy or less energy, it would reflect on the bills. But if I don't care about the bills, then I must think about, what is my contribution towards the community and towards, the society that would be using this universe for longer than what we would be using it for. So what's the contribution? So I think people's mindsets should not be driven by our freedom. People's mindsets should also be driven, I guess, to an extent by the contribution and our obligation to contribute towards the society. So some of the challenges people face is often that it's probably too laid back, and I guess it's within their comfort zone, and there is no regulations that they have to follow. But life doesn't just stick to regulations and rules always. So um, from an ethical or moral sort of responsibility, we can do so much better, I guess, instead of just policies and rules.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. And I think part of it is that, old habits die hard. And a lot of us have grown so accustomed to a certain kind of lifestyle where we don't have to think so much about our energy or water usage. And we don't get confronted much by the consequences that we have maybe put onto the world, which is actually quite sad because it's quite sad that we need to be confronted with that information on a more regular basis in order to think about it further, if that makes sense. But then again, it's also the cycle of how the world works, and we have bigger priorities like working and just getting along with life. But what is something that you would recommend doing um, to I suppose get this habit going of like reflecting on our water or energy usage?
Yeah, I guess in terms of habits, I think it comes down to personal choices as well. Like you said, that people have their lifestyle, people have to get on with what they're used to doing and how they want to, drive their lifestyle. But again, I think some of the key. I mean, if you look at like when the world is a full circle, so we started from clay, then we thought about making something even stronger. So our mindset has always been how to make things better, but then we forgot about while just one perception is to make it better from one aspect, not necessarily mean that we are ticking all the boxes and we are losing the other side. So, which then, if you look at, all the developments and technological advancement that people have gone through, it's now coming back to the old days again, where people would like to use more sustainable ways of thinking and doing work and building houses and our day-to-day lifestyle. So, yes, we develop technology to solve the problems that we created. So I guess building on habits is important. I mean, if we compare with lifestyle, we have different diseases that we are having, challenges with these days that we have to take up, you know, medicines and build more immunity. So we created that problem to solve the other problem. So building habits is very important, right? I mean, you don't have to change your whole lifestyle. It's just small habits. You actually don't have to do a lot. It's just reflection of your whole day could be just a couple of minutes of your day that did I actually do this differently? I guess it's all about life as well, that we're trying to do things differently in our work, in our life, in our personal life as well. So why can't it be not done in our regular practice when it comes to energy efficiency and water usage? As I said, that you know people are living longer, to be honest, before, but now why we're suffering so much with pollution and with all the mess that we have created. So I think in terms of habits, I think we should be looking at you know, yes, I have the access to the natural resources, but at the end of the day, as we know, energy is conserved in the universe. So is water. So can I actually use as much as I need and not overuse it? So it's not so difficult. It's just putting targets to ourselves, and it's just self motivation as well. But it's becoming more regular now. So people, if they don't change their habits, they may be forced to do it. After some time, that you would have limited access to water, you'd have limited access to energy as well. So it's good to practice habits now instead being forced to do it.
Yeah. You know what I would love to see in the future is, how we have like mobile apps for our phone data usage. I would love to see something like that, but for our water usage, our energy usage, for example. But then again, that requires like data centers, which require water to cool down the data center. So actually, maybe it's not a good idea. But I think that will give people a lot more insights, or like make it a bit more accessible to people, um, to view that data. But anyway, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you about this. I've learned so much from you, genuinely, and I think now would be a perfect time to allow you to talk about anything that you wish to talk about, that you're passionate about, and it doesn't have to be related to the topic. So this is the open mic segment, and the floor is yours. So take it away.
Yeah, no, thank you for the opportunity. I think it's been great, first of all, to talk and share some of these ideas with you. But in terms of, I guess, my I don't know if I should call it advice, but I think what I would really like, I guess, to see we all practice, and I'll stick to this theme and topic, that sustainable, practice of homes and living. So I think, I just would like to remind people that the problems we face today, for example, I'll take air quality, for example, how it affects our health and well-being. So we are in this universe for only a limited time, and we know that health is the wealth, the real wealth, and we all know it, but how much we actually practice is what the key problem is here. So I would just like to remind all of us, including myself, that health and well-being is the utmost priority, and the sustainable and energy efficient way of living is really so important for health and well-being. So poor indoor air quality, for example, can lead to different problems. We have different respiratory problems, we have fatigues, headaches, we have other infection, long-term diseases as well that we know. So it's a big problem. So I would just like to remind, we know it, but I would just like to remind people from this platform that, your sustainable way of living can really contribute towards your health and well-being. And it's very important, and we should practice it in our day-to-day.
Thank you for that, Chris. If our listeners want to find out more about you and what you do, where can they go?
I guess if you type my name, and you probably find a bunch of profiles. If you're interested in the research that we do, then obviously you can find us in different research platforms and find my research articles. You can go Google my name, and you'll probably find a Google Scholar, where most of the researchers would be having a profile where people can read our research articles and find more about what we do. And obviously we have university's web page, and I would have a personal Wikipedia page as well very soon, and next week or so you can find more about my work and what we try to contribute to.
Wow, that's amazing. A Wikipedia page.
Yeah, I was been asked to create one, actually, not long ago, about a month ago. So the page is almost ready now. So I've been told they will be ready soon. So it's really a replication of what research and contributions we are trying to make towards building construction sector, really.
Well, we'll link that in the show notes along with all your other profiles on Google Scholar, etc. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We hope you learned something about the kinds of materials you should be using if you're building a home or renovating, any sustainable modifications if you are remodeling, and also the practical renter-friendly tips. So yeah, I hope you learned something from that, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Room by Room, produced by the Home Organisation Science Labs, a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes like this from across 10 life management perspectives can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and other podcasting apps available on your smart devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps other people find it so we can grow and bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website at ho.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Gabriella Yastra. Thanks for tuning in.